All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. It looks like there are a few people that have joined us. We really appreciate that. To start with, I would ask that you please use the chat to sign in so we know who was able to be on this call. And then also wanted to let you know that we will be recording this so that we can post it on our website, hopefully within the next week. So just want you to be aware of that. So this office hours is on Title I overview. Thank you, everybody. We are going to go ahead and go through what the agenda is for today's meeting. We're going to go over the federal programs timeline, talk about targeted versus school-wide, do a little bit on the programmatic monitoring, which there'll be more sessions on that later. Talk about the requirements, then talk about the paraprofessionals, non-public services, and reimbursements. To begin with the timeline, I believe Rhonda is going to put a link in the chat that will get you to the timeline. So if you watch the chat, we are going to be putting several links in there during this office hours. At any rate, if you get to our website, this is on the federal programs page that is also posted there. So if you lose this link at a later time, this is where you will find it on the federal programs website.
Okay, so we're going to just kind of jump right in here to what is a targeted program versus a school-wide program. So you can see here that there are a lot of similarities, but everyone starts off, when you start your title program, everyone starts off as a targeted building. And then you designate students through a matrix or through a screening process. And then the Title I teacher only works with those students who are identified through the screening process. And then those students must meet a certain criteria to exit the intervention program. In a school-wide, um, you still designate students through a matrix and a screening process, but the Title I teacher can work with any and all students, and those groups can change at any time. So it's a little more fluid, moving students in and out of those interventions. It's not such a official deal. And it's a little bit easier for the Title I teacher to just kind of work with anyone who is struggling rather than just the designated students. So how do you go from a targeted to a school-wide? Well, the first thing is that you need to have at least 40% of your population on free or reduced lunch. That is the initial point of where we can then move to school-wide. Then there is a special form to fill out. It's a school-wide intent form. You fill that out and send it to us by December 1st. If you want to switch from a targeted program to a school-wide program for next school year. Then you're building your elementary or whomever, you get to create a school-wide plan, and then you submit it to NDE by April 1st for review and approval, and then that following school year, you can start your school-wide program. Then we get into monitoring. So we've moved from a 3-year cycle to a 5-year cycle, I think last year, the year before. This was intended to make sure that when you are monitored, you are in year 2 of your monitoring cycle. So, year 3 really, because it'll be 2 years after your external visit. And so with that, we come in and we just try to make sure that everything is in compliance with the federal law. And to do that, we have this great monitoring guide checklist that can be found on our website and that Rhonda just put in the chat. Now, the checklist can seem a little daunting because it is really long because it has to cover every single title program that the ESSA consolidated application covers. And so if you are a program and you just move all your money to Title I, it's not as daunting. It's only about 12 pages worth of things that you need to fill out. But why do we do it? So when you get the monitoring guide checklist, you might want to say, you know, what is this? Who fills it out? When do we have to submit it? What all needs to be on there? And so we're going to go through these common questions right here that you see when everyone gets their monitoring guide checklist. And the big answer for why do we do it? Because we have to. It is a federal requirement that programs get monitored. And so we've taken the law, all the requirements, and put it into this checklist. And then it's kind of a team effort to who fills it out. It should be the superintendent, maybe the bookkeeper, maybe a principal. And then there is just a little section for the Title I teacher. Should really point out that your Title I teacher should never be filling out fully the checklist, that it is a team effort, that we should have some admin filling it out as well, because we talk about the continuous improvement plan and some policies. And so it's not the Title I teacher's responsibility to fill that out. You fill it out when we send it to you. And then we give you a timeline. It usually is a week or two before our actual visit, that you submit it to us so we have time to look through it and make comments for our visit. It makes the visit go a lot quicker once we have that beforehand. And then we're going to go over what you should keep year to year for the monitoring schedule and what all is required of it. So on this next slide, we have an example of what a page out of the monitoring guide checklist looks like. So as it's a little combobbled right here, but this is just a page out of that. The first thing I want you to take notice of is everything in yellow. So up at the top, it says district completes. That is the column that the districts fill out. That is where you put in your comments. You might put links to board policies, but anything that pertains to your district has to have something filled out in that box. So, and we're not looking for huge answers, but a sentence or two in every box that applies to your district. So everything in yellow here would apply to every district. This is a sample out of the McKinney-Vento page. So you guys fill in your information. You give us just a little sentence about what you do. And then on the very last column, you can see that's where NDE completes, and we put our comments. So that's usually once we go in and we're talking, and then we just kind of type in our notes, our comments there. But the district does have to complete everything that you see in yellow there on that page.
I think it's now on to my section. The one thing that I would just mention to everybody is what you're hearing today should not be new. Okay, so um, we don't have additional requirements that we're expecting this year because we have not had to change anything. So that's the good news. So hopefully a lot of this is a refresher, but we just wanted to talk through some of the requirements because it seems like people forget that, oh, we do need to do this every year. So these things haven't changed. It's just they are the requirements. So you always, every year, targeted or school-wide, you do have to have a parent meeting. Okay. Parent meeting needs to happen sometime. People do it in various ways, but you should keep the invitation. So we're going to ask, how did you let parents know there was a meeting? We'll ask for either the agenda or the minutes. We'll have to collect that during monitoring. Either is fine. We don't have to have both. And then the sign-in sheet. So make sure you keep the sign-in sheet as well. And then you can see that there's a Title I annual meeting PDF that we'll put in the chat if it's not already there for you to just grab and have in your files. And then you do need to do the school parent compact. Signatures are encouraged, but not required. So just remember that as you're collecting those from parents. I always tell people, don't go running through the parking lot trying to get that last parent to sign that compact. Just make sure that you share that compact with parents. A lot of people will put it in their handbook for the year, and then parents sign off on the handbook saying, hey, we received it and we agree with everything in here, which is really a signature in itself. You must have a district homeless liaison. So once every 3 years, someone within your district needs to take the McKinney-Vento homeless training that's on our website. That's a must. You must keep your certificate. I would encourage you to do it once, for sure, once every 3 years, but maybe on those odd years that it's not your third year, maybe have your guidance counselor do it, maybe have your secretary do it, maybe have your enrollee attendant person, whoever enrolls your kids, let one of those people do it as well, because it's really good information about students and the rights of students that are homeless. And then for those districts that have two or more buildings at the same grade level with over 100 kids in each of those, you do have to do a comparability report, and that is something that Beth will send out to you coming up in about the next month or so. You'll get that information. So that does not apply to everybody, but it does apply to those bigger districts. And on the next slide, annual program self-review. Okay, remember that as a school-wide or a targeted building, you must do a self-review of how your program is going every year. Okay, how are we doing? How are things going? Are there any changes we need to make? Maybe you look at your matrix and say, we had this as our baseline for when kids got services, but we think we want to expand that or lower it, whatever the case may be. If you have non-public Title I students and they are served, so they're your district students and they're served at a non-public, you do need to do a targeted self-review with that non-public every year as well. So that's, again, not a new requirement, just something that has to be done. And honestly, that's probably the one piece that I see that gets missed the most is you don't really reflect back on the targeted program at the non-public and how that's going and if any changes are needed. And then we used to have pull all our school-wide plans together, and you'd come in and review and figure out and look at other people's school-wide plans. And we don't do that anymore. It's the expectation that your building school-wide plans are reviewed at the school level each year, and then the plan is posted on the website, the school's website, a lot of times under your Title I page with the other requirements that I'll go through on the next slide. Okay, so time and efforts, everybody's favorite word, right? And you hear that a lot from us as program monitor reviewers. You're going to hear that a lot when you do fiscal monitoring from NDE. You must do time and efforts every year, right? Bottom line, you have to have time and efforts. The majority of you can do a semi-annual time and effort because you are doing the salary like of a Title I teacher, and they have a set salary or a set schedule for the year. So you do one after first semester and you do one at the end of the school year. You should not do those time and efforts prior to the work being completed. So if you've got a first semester time and effort sitting on your desk right now with signatures saying, yep, we did all this work through December 21st of 2025, and we signed it on October 1st of 2025, that is not a legitimate time and effort because you have no guarantee that that Title I teacher is going to continue in that role for the next 3 months. So you should do it always after the work has been accomplished. You should keep on file your semi-annual or whatever time and effort you're using. Keep them on file for the 5 years for monitoring for both programmatic and for fiscal monitoring. And then time and efforts should match, right? We're always talking about the match. It's matching your grant if you put staff members in your grant. It should match your bookkeeping records. So if we say we have 45% of our salary and benefits can be paid, that should be in your bookkeeping records. It should also match your NSSRS percentages. So those are very critical pieces that all of those percentages should match. Okay, next slide. Okay, so parent notifications, just a couple of informations about that. This is things that has to occur every year. My guess is going to be that this is also in your handbook. If not, you need to find a way to get this information out to parents. So there's a requirement about students being taught 4 or more weeks by a teacher that doesn't meet state certification. Now let's talk about that. Let's say that you have a middle school teacher, certified middle school, who's going to come down and teach second grade because your second grade teacher needs to go out for 8 weeks of maternity leave. If that middle school teacher is not certified to teach second grade, which in this case, that person would not, And that person's going to be in the classroom for 4 more consecutive weeks. In my example, it was 8 weeks. You would need to let parents know that you have a substitute in that classroom that's not meeting state certification. If you need wording on that, we can help you with that. We always caution people to be very careful how you share that with parents because you sure don't want to make any substitute teacher upset, right? Where you say, oh, not certified. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's a middle school teacher teaching second grade. I don't think you'd have very many subs who want to be in your building if you do that. So please reach out if you need support in how to do that. And then the other thing is parents may request the professional qualifications of the students' teachers. So that's another piece. And you can find both of the wording for both of those within the monitoring guide checklist. So if you need information on that, be sure to look for that. And again, just make sure that that information, if it's posted in your handbook every year, it makes it a lot easier.
Okay, the next one is about the parent and family engagement policies. This is a requirement. And Rhonda, I think, is going to put in the chat a link to our website that has some some examples for you to look at. While these are called policies, they're really more procedures, and they don't need to be written by a legal firm or approved by the local school board. Just make sure that you have these policies and they're specific to the district or the school, and have all the details of how the district or school is meeting the requirements. The next slide talks a little bit about resources that are available on the formerly Transact parent notices. Now they have a new name, Pathwise K-12 parent notices. And I think Ron is going to put a link in there to the login page if you want that. And then also the self-onboard if you need to sign up for this subscription. You can get all sorts of documents for Title I and for parent and family engagement in this resource, and it's a subscription NDE has provided for all the districts. That subscription comes up for negotiation again at the end of this year, and that may not continue. So I'm just giving you a heads up that these resources in here are wonderful. They come in multiple languages. You may want to check them out and grab some now. Just letting you know. There's just an example of some of the languages that are available. It just depends on the document that you choose to get. And if you have any questions, I can help with that later.
Now we're going to talk about paraprofessionals. And as both Anne and Dottie mentioned earlier, we have target assisted buildings and school-wide buildings. And that will determine which paras in your building have to meet this requirement. And at target assisted school, only those paraprofessionals that are paid with Title I funds have to meet these requirements. However, in a school-wide building, all paraprofessionals providing instructional support for students need to meet these requirements. And as you see that first line we talk about, these requirements should be met prior to the paraprofessionals working with the students. So there's two pieces that these staff members have to meet. The first one is they have to have a high school degree or have completed and passed the GED. And then for the second part, there's a few options. If someone has 48 hours or more semester credit hours of college, that's the second part that they could be qualified through, or they have an associate's degree, or they've passed one of the 4 following tests. So it could be the Parapro, which is provided by ETS, the Work Keys, which is provided by ACT. We are taking some changes to our Work Keys requirements to the community of practitioners later this month, but as of now, those requirements have not changed. We expect a small tweak on that, and we'll let everybody know after the committee of practitioners has discussed that, what the new requirements will be. The third test is the paraeducator through master teacher. And then the fourth is Project Para, which is in Canvas, which we put that link in the chat. That's through NDE. It is also a free service. And one thing good about Project Para, other than being just free, is there's multiple tests. So for paras, there could be up to 3 tests taken, one specific for Title I. If that teacher is just going to be providing Title I para support, that'd be perfect for them. There's also for paras an early childhood and a special education. A lot of our bigger districts I know prefer to have all of these taken just so that if they need to move the para around, they can. But for Title I paraprofessional, it would just be the Title I section that has to be taken. And as a reminder, these should all be accomplished prior to these paraprofessionals working with our students. And now we'll go on to our non-public Title I services and the requirements that go along with that. And again, if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. I am the non-public ombudsman, so I work with our private schools as well as our public schools with this. One of the key things to remember with Title I is our Title I allocations follow the students. So if we have a public resident student that goes to a non-public school, it doesn't matter where that non-public school is. That's still our student, and the public must serve that student if they qualify. So the money follows them. But sometimes we get the question, well, that student's an hour away from us. Right, you would probably work with the local school district in that case to provide those services. You would provide the funding to that public school and they would provide those services. Another big reminder is the consultation. That should start in March and April. We have the forms that will be available for you then. So that'll be for both Title I and Within Boundaries, but specifically focusing Title I. Those will be in the portal. Last year, Within Boundaries was in the portal. This year, both Title I and Within Boundaries, as though neither one will be specifically in the CDC. So we had some issues with that. We'll make sure to send out plenty of reminders starting in March when that comes up. We will also be doing a non-public consultation webinar for all districts on March 4th as well. So at the very start of that time period. One of the keys with that third bullet is the public school provides the services and is the fiscal agent for all funds. A public school district should never be sending a check to the private school. So the public school should be paying for the invoices, should be paying any staff that's hired. They should either be an employee of the district or a contractor for the district, or you could also use a third-party vendor for these services. Another key is that ongoing consultation. Consultation just doesn't happen in March and April. It should start in March and April, updates happening in August and September as the school year starts, and just ongoing consultation in case adjustments need to be made, changes need to be made to the program, but also updating the non-public schools on how much money for services is available. And then right now, just a reminder, this is not something for the public schools, but right now your non-public schools should be putting in their membership numbers into the non-membership report that's open. So if you're having that ongoing consultation right now, or you're talking to your non-public schools for any reason, just remind them to make sure to get that non-public membership completed by the end of October, because that is what helps us figure out who needs the Title I consultation and the Within Boundaries consultation forms available in March. And it also is how the non-public service amounts are determined. So it's really important that our non-publics are doing that currently. We've also put in the chat for you, if you'd like to go directly to our page that has non-public school information, that's available in the chat.
This is my slide, so I wanted to visit with you a little bit about reimbursement requests and their timeline. So we know that from August to September, it's crazy time with your budgets, trying to get them approved by the school board. Maybe some of you had to have some hearings, and hopefully those hearings have been held. And so now you're ready to think about a few other things. And hopefully what you're ready to think about are some reimbursement requests. There are a couple dates in here that you need to keep in mind. One of them is for the 24-25 ESSA program, that all reimbursements must be submitted into the GMS by November 15th. That's the deadline date. So hopefully you'll get everything reimbursed before that date, but November 15th is the deadline date. Then another important date for you to remember is September 30th, which is yesterday. That's the last date that any services could have been provided to obligate those funds. So September 30th is the last date for obligation, and November 15th is by when you have to have the reimbursements in. So if you remember, your reimbursements are done through the GMS, and it's in the 2025 drop down. And get them done. If you need help, reach out to us. We can help you with them. But the biggest thing we want to share with you is please, please, if you're thinking about releasing funds back to NDE due to lack of spending, please reach out to your title consultant and we can work with you and maybe find a way that you could get those funds claimed. The other thing I wanted to mention real quickly is that if you, let's say that you've done all your reimbursements and you have zero left to claim, but you didn't do a final reimbursement, hopefully the fiscal office caught that and sent it back and said, hey, this has to be a final reimbursement. But if not, if they didn't catch it and you have claimed all your funds, you may be getting emails from the system saying you have to submit a final reimbursement. And if you do and you have no funds left, just put a zero amount in there and that'll count as the final reimbursement. Going to the next slide is, we all know that in the school, it's a busy time right now. And while you're in the school, the focus should be on teaching and learning. And that's where your focus should be and your staff's focus should be. And up on top of this, we layer the monitoring and the program monitoring and anything else that needs to be done. So if we can help you in any way with what has to be done that's up on top of the teaching and learning, please reach out to us and we'll be glad to help you with anything extra. I know the consultants will probably be reaching out to their districts that they do have to monitor this year. And the other point I wanted to make is that there are some districts that will, in order to stay within the 5-year monitoring cycle, that if we waited until 2 years after their school improvement visit, that would be longer than 5 years. So there's a few that are going to have an extra monitoring this year. And hopefully your consultant will reach out to you and let you know that.
Okay. Now the big question is, what are your questions?
Free to ask in a few minutes. We're gonna stay on. Well, also, if you need to go into a breakout room to ask questions, we can do that too. This is just our contact information. If you can't get a hold of the consultant that is assigned to your area, feel free to contact any of us. We are all more than willing and happy to help you. This also, Janice and Rhonda's information are on there because they are a really good source, especially if it's a reimbursement thing. Since Janice came from the budget and grant management team, she understands reimbursements really, really well. So if you have specific questions on that, she might be able to help better than some of us on that. So we just wanted to make sure you had all of our contact information. And we want to thank you for coming and listening to this. We will put the recording on our federal programs website probably next week because we have to close caption it. And then we will put the PowerPoint on hopefully later today. So that information will be there. Thank you so much. Any other questions or anything, feel free to stay on. Or if anyone from our team has anything else they need to share.